Talk. This is Tampa, 88.5 FM. Stay tuned. We're going to be talking live to an Egyptian blogger and discuss all that happened in 2014 and his expectations for to come back to True Talk. This is your host, Samar Jarrah, and Happy New Year's, everybody. Hope you had great holidays and Merry Christmas. And thank you for joining True Talk on WMNF. Today is our first show in 2015, and it's a good start to start it with an Egyptian blogger. His name is Wael Abbas, and he is really a well-known Egyptian journalist and blogger and human rights activist. He blogs at a blog called Misr Digital, and he, I think, was one of the first Egyptians, if not the first Arab, to ever report on police brutality in the Arab world. He is one of the, of course, participants of the January 25 revolution or uprising that took place in Egypt a couple of years ago and led to the ousting of Hosni Mubarak. However, things did not go well in what was called or now is known as the Arab Spring. Lots of frustration among young people because many believe that the old regime came back in force. We're going to be talking with Wael on different issues related to the Middle East and the Arab world in particular, the elections in Tunisia, what is going on in Egypt, his predictions of what could happen in the Arab world in 2015. And for those who are listening, you can send us questions at dj@wmnf.org, dj@wmnf.org. You can also text us if you text to 813-433-0885. You can send your questions or comments as we speak live on the air if you send a text to 813-433-0885. I already received about 5 or 6 questions already because I tweeted that Wael is going to be on the show. Good morning, Wael.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I am very good, thank you. Let me begin by asking you, are you hopeful of what 2015 might bring to your country? Let me start with Egypt because you're Egyptian. Are you hopeful that something could transpire where it satisfies the young people who rose on January 25th and thought they were able to change the regime?
Well, in order for somebody to be hopeful, you have to see some development, something developing for the better. Until this moment, there is nothing promising in the Egyptian situation, unfortunately. And any development will be some kind of a gift from the dictator, from Sisi, if he made some pardons or something like that. But other than that, the political situation in Egypt is not developing, and the world is slowly recognizing the de facto dictator of Egypt. The opposition in Egypt is weary and fading and tired of this military regime, is continuous oppression and the costly street activity that they do that results in sending a lot of people to jail and killing a lot of people on the street. The situation is not promising, but this doesn't make us feel that we should give up, because if we give up, we should stop what we're doing. But I personally, I'm not planning on stopping what I'm doing anytime soon, because the situation we have now needs persistence. If you're persistent, you might achieve something at the end.
People are, if you follow like young people on Twitter, and especially myself, because I live in the States, and for some reason, people in the Arab world think anybody who lives in the States can help somebody who lives in the Arab world to immigrate to America. But so many young people feel desperation and feel that really there is no hope, and they want to go and travel to any Western nation that can take them. At the same time, Wael, you see full Western support for President Sisi, even in China. He was in China, he was in Russia, he was in Europe. I don't see any Western objection to what he did.
The West will always support any dictatorial regime as long as it preserves its interests in the country. The United States supported Morsi as long as Morsi promised them that the American interests in Egypt will be intact. It's all about interests, Russian interests, Chinese interests, European interests. Nobody really cares about freedom for the Egyptian. Nobody cares if there is real democracy in Egypt unless oppression is affecting their investments and trade relations with Egypt. So I don't expect much out of the governments of the world, whether in oppressive countries like China and Russia or in countries that claim freedom like the United States. All I expect is the attention of the media, the real free media, the media that is not really controlled by businessmen who are also following their interests or the interests of the politicians who are in line with them, and the interest of the activists worldwide. These are the ones who are really making changes in their societies and in their countries, and the interests of the civil society organizations themselves that are not allowed to work anymore in Egypt, and they are always facing accusations of being agents of the West and working for foreign agendas to undermine the Egyptian culture and religion and whatever stuff that they accuse them of.
When you talk about interest, let me concentrate on American interest. You said the U.S. would not go against the regime in Egypt as long as the regime serves American interests. What are the American interests in Egypt?
The Americans have many interests in Egypt: military, logistical, economical. Lots of American interest, investment. The Americans always want Egypt to be a partner in the peacekeeping in the region. They want Egypt to have peace with Israel. They want nothing to interrupt this. They want Egypt to help them with their operations, especially military operations in the Middle East. Whether they are in Syria, Iraq, or against Iran, if something like that ever happened. So the Americans have lots and lots of interests, and the need to keep the Egyptian regime, whether it's Ikhwani or military or even revolutionaries, to keep them on their side and preserve their interests.
Let me start, Wael, with addressing the questions that I'm receiving. I just got now on our email, dj@wmnf.org, and I encourage our listeners who have questions for Wael to send them like Sharif did here. Is there a way out to a true democracy in Egypt that does not involve partnering with religious or military fascists? You might have answered the question, Wael, but do you want to address it?
Well,
is there a way out, really? Because the military seems to be involved not only with the political life of Egypt, but with the economy.
Yes, the involvement of the military in the economy is the hardest challenge we are going to face. Even if we finally had democracy in Egypt, it will be very hard. It will need surgery to get the military out of the economical scene in Egypt. And yes, the only way out, the only way for democracy is not with partnering with the military. The military mind operates in a different way than the civilian mind it always focuses on order and covering up and stuff like that and doing things in secrecy, and these think that oppression is the only way to discipline the people into following them and following their orders. And also the Islamists are fascists by nature. They believe in imposing their beliefs and their view of life on everybody else. So none of these really believe in democracy. So we need the political factions, the revolutionary political factions, to unite into some front, some unity, some kind of organization, and have their own united agenda, not necessarily agreeing on everything, not necessarily having one political ideology or one view of how the economy is going to be run in Egypt, but at least have something to face the Islamization of the country and the militarization of the country, and to gather the youth around them. Because what the revolution is lacking now in Egypt is having a body, having an organization, having something that you can feel its existence. Unlike the Islamists, whether they are Salafi or Afghanis, you can feel them in the street. You can feel their presence, even if they were removed from power. And you also can feel the presence of the corrupt old Mubarak regime that is now in alliance with the military junta that is running Egypt.
Which leads me to a question that we received via Twitter, Wael. If we can go back in time to the January 25th Times and uprising, what would you have done differently, or what the youth should have done differently then?
The youth shouldn't have left Tahrir that early. Tahrir should have been there to monitor how things would develop. We had traitors among us. The traitors who are the ones who chanted the people and the army are one hand. Some of them were naive and ignorant, and they followed this motto blindly, which resulted in the situation that we have now at the moment. I believe that we should have chosen like a revolutionary council, a revolutionary union, something like that, to speak in the name of the revolution. And we should have written a constitution before we left the square. Once we left the square, we were fragmented, and everybody thought that we were successful and started working on their own agendas, Islamist agenda, liberal agenda, socialist agenda, whatever agenda. And this resulted in the situation that we are in at the moment. So I believe we shouldn't have left the square unless we made sure that the revolution is running the country and the military is obeying the revolution, not controlling it like what happened later.
If you're just joining us, this is True Talk on WMNF, and I'm talking to Egyptian blogger Wael Abbas. He is one of the early bloggers and what can we call as digital media starters in the Arab world. Very, very early, one of the very early journalists in the Arab world who paid attention to the power of blogging and exposing the atrocities committed by the police and other institutions. If you have any questions, you can email us at dj@wmnf.org. Well, let me ask you about Tunisia, because this is really where everything started when the vegetable vendor burnt himself, and everybody knows about the Bouazizi. Then Tunisia had an election where a president was elected. He was seen as a liberal, not attached to a religious agenda. Now we have an 88 years old president. What do you think of what happened and transpired in Tunisia?
Well, the Tunisians are in a stage where they are experimenting, but their chances are good, much, much better than the chances that we have in Egypt. Well, the Tunisian people, they tried the Islamists. They wanted to see those people who are speaking in the name of God and how they are going to run the country. And then they discovered by themselves that the Islamists are a failure. So they just removed them. And now they are going to experiment with a liberal president. Unfortunately, he is from the old regime. He is a relic from the past. But fortunately for them, the revolution is running the country. They have a constitution, a revolutionary constitution. They have revolutionary laws. Everybody is watching. And also, fortunately, the army is not interfering in the political situation in Egypt. Nobody is trying to hijack the country, kidnap the country at gunpoint, like what happened in Egypt. We in Egypt now are being mugged. We're being robbed at gunpoint. And all you can do in a situation like this is let the person with the gun do whatever he wants to do in order for yourself to remain safe until you are able to do anything. But in Tunisia, it is different. They can remove a government democratically, remove a parliament, remove a president, and replace it with somebody else until they try to change the situation, these people who are running the country. Only then I will feel suspicious of their intentions. But so far, yes, I hate al-Sibsi. I don't like the guy. I know he's past. But people are fed up with the Islamists. They feel that the Islamists disappointed them. They had other intentions. So they are trying something else, something different. And this is good. This is not a bad thing or a bad situation. This means that the Tunisians are on the right path, on the right track. They will try something and then they will try something else.
Are they different because they have more, let's say, knowledge, or they have went through some cultural revolution? Because, when you go to Egypt and some other countries, people actually tell you the weirdest things about democratic process where, yes, it is okay to spy on people. Yes, it is okay to arrest people. Yes, it is okay to shoot at demonstrators because, they are blocking our roads. They are preventing us from going to work. So do you feel that the Tunisians, for some historical reason, have more awareness?
The Tunisians have been always more educated than the Egyptians. Unfortunately, I'm saying that out loud, but this is true. This is real. This is what made the difference. The amount of illiteracy in Egypt is one of the things that are hindering us from becoming better. It's one of the things that are keeping us from embracing these new values to us, the new values of democracy and stuff like that. The Tunisian educational system was secular by nature. It was embracing modern ideologies and modern thoughts and ideas, and it helped the Tunisian know what is good for them. But for Egyptians, we were kept in the dark for the most of the time. Our educational system was focusing on implanting myth in our minds and making sure that we are obedient to the system that is running the country. Doesn't matter which system is running the country. And also the media has played a role in spreading the propaganda. The media has always been in control by the military, by the security apparatus, and the people tend to believe the media if there are no other alternatives. And the media people are, I blame them greatly because they are only focusing on their interests. They have financial interests and big salaries and advertising money and stuff like that. And this is all what they care about. But nobody is really doing any enlightening work. And even the people who are trying to enlightening others through sarcasm, like Bassem Youssef, for example, he was removed. Bassem Youssef was not an activist. He's not a thinker. He's not an activist. But his program was doing some kind of enlightenment.
Let me just interrupt you here, Wael, to explain to our listeners that Bassem Youssef is the Egyptian version or the Arabic version of Jon Stewart. He had a show where he almost looks and acts like Jon Stewart, and really deals with very touchy and sensitive political, religious, cultural issues in a very, very comical way. But he was extremely popular, and he was making fun of whoever was in power. So go ahead, continue, Wael.
Yes, what I meant is that the regime had no tolerance at all to criticism, even if it was sarcasm. The role that was played by Bassem Youssef was very good to me, because it just didn't make people laugh or happy, but it made them critical of the situation in Egypt. Trying to choose between things and make decisions and question what they are being told through the media. The good thing about Bassem shows that he was critical of the other media presenters, the talk shows and the other broadcasters who were just spreading regime propaganda and trying to fool the people into believing them. But the regime was not tolerant to this, and of course, Bassem's show stopped, and now he is facing trial, and he is forced to pay fines of around 100 million Egyptian pounds, which is around $10 million or something like that.
Yeah, I think $5 million penalty because he was a witness to a contract that he had nothing to do with it. To our listeners, this is True Talk on WMNF, and I am your host, Samar Jarrah, and I'm talking to Wael Abbas, an Egyptian blogger. If you have a question, you can call us at 813-239-9663, 813-239-9663, or you can send us an email to dj@wmnf.org, dj@wmnf.org, or text us to 813-433-0885, 813-433-0885. And well, I just got a message, a text saying, is there any Arab political personality that you favor or admire or speak kindly of?
Well, if there were any, we could have witnessed some development in any Arab country, but unfortunately, can the asker of the question tell me which Arab country is an example of democracy and modernity in the region? No, we don't. We only had dictators. We think they were good because they did good things by force, by imposing them on us. So at the end, we come out with nothing. There is no inspiring leaders or leaders who really wanted to promote democracy. We've had, for example, in Tunisia, we've had Bourguiba. Bourguiba wanted to modernize his country. He wanted his country to be secular, but he did that by force, which people didn't like, and it also resulted in coming up with a follower like Ben Ali, who was the worst dictator Tunisia has witnessed. So if you did not establish a democratical system in your country, dictators will follow you no matter how good you are. I'm not saying that Bourguiba was the best or the good, but he was still a dictator despite all what he did to his country. Anwar Sadat also, he was 50% civilian, 50% military. He tried to do good things for his country, but then the follower of him was a product of the regime that Sadat was part of. It was Hosni Mubarak. So no matter how good you are, or if you are a dictator, nothing out is going to come out of you or out of the people who are following you. If you did not establish democracy and freedom in your country, you did nothing.
You have been here for a couple of weeks, Wael. Do you follow American news channels? Do you have any comment to make about them? Do you see any coverage of Libya, for instance? You know, when the Libya fiasco was going on and the NATO attack on Libya was going on, our media was covering it 24 hours all day for a couple of weeks now. You can hardly hear anything about Libya. You have any comment, first of all, about U.S. media coverage of the Arab world, the region, and in general, and then maybe we need to shift the conversation to Libya and what's going on there?
Well, unfortunately, the media consumption inside the United States is focusing on local news. If I'm in Virginia, then the news is covering Virginia, the weather in Virginia, accidents in Virginia, fires and plane crashes in Virginia. This applies also to New York, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., whatever city you are in. So there is not much interest in the international news inside of the United States. And the minorities who are living in the United States, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Arabs, Jews, whatever, they are only focusing on the parts of the news that are of interest to them. So they usually follow their own channels that they subscribe to via cable or satellite or whatever. So the American the coverage of the Arab world in the American media, I don't see it obvious at all. Even in the newspapers, you have local editions of the newspapers. You have the Washington Post for certain area and the Washington Post for some other state, some other city, and the news is different. It differs from one place to the other. So I don't see any interest in the Arab region except among minorities or people who are working in fields like media production and civil society and politics, and who are close to the circles of the government, maybe in the Washington D.C. or stuff like that.
Is that a bad thing, Wael?
Of course, it's a bad thing. It makes the American citizens only focused on the situation inside his country, while he is completely ignorant and in the dark when it comes to what's happening in the world outside. For example, the Americans now are happy because the prices of oil are dropping. But do they really know how oil prices are dropping and why are they dropping, and what the outcome of this, and what's happening in Saudi Arabia, in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, that's affecting these prices? I really doubt.
Can you explain it to them? Can you explain briefly why the prices are going down so sharply? And it's not like there was a huge terrorist attack somewhere or a natural disaster. It's as if man-made.
Well, I'm not one of those people who encourage the conspiracy theory, but something is going on between the United States and Saudi Arabia, and the other Gulf countries are helping in reducing the oil prices. Some people claim it's to harm the Russian economy. Others are saying it's to harm the Iranian economy. Nobody is really discussing what is going on to make things like this happen. It's not really clear. We are all being kept in the dark by large powers in the world that are controlling things. And I'm not only talking about the oil prices, but for example, the Americans when they woke up on September 11 and found out that somebody has attacked the towers, they didn't know who did that and why. They only started caring after the disaster happened. If they were following what the Americans were doing in Afghanistan and in Iraq and other countries, in Palestine, and the support of the Israelis and stuff like that, they would have predicted that there's some negative feelings towards what the United States is doing abroad. And they would have realized, but the thing came to them as a surprise because they had no background about the problems between the United States and other countries that might result in an attack like that.
If you're just joining us, this is True Talk on WMNF, and I'm talking to Egyptian blogger who is visiting the U.S. for a couple of weeks, Wael Abbas. If you need to call him, if you need to ask him a question, please call 813-239-9663. 813-239-9663. And let me go to Eddie in Nokomis. Good morning, Eddie. You're on True Talk.
Hello. Hey, I'm glad to be here. I had a little insight on that. I think that the price and the drop of oil and all that has a little bit to do with putting, the solar people and all those guys hurting them, because if you can say, well, wow, we don't need to go to solar power, because the price of oil is dropping and all that. So that's like a strategic move to hurt renewable energy for sure. And the other point I wanted to make was I still don't quite understand the history of the Middle East and Saudi Arabia when we made the deal with President Roosevelt to protect the royal family and that whole thing about kings and queens and everybody still controlling that. It just seems like nothing has changed in the 5,000 years of Egypt. It's like there's still, but it's a worldwide theme. If you think about it, it's just people that have, that are in control and have a lot. They don't want the masses to gain any ground. Even just like here, President Reagan wanted to stop the middle class from growing because at some point they were getting too much. So it's almost like they're afraid that if the little people get a little bit, that somehow they're going to, try to take over their stuff. So the rich people are just still trying to protect what they have. And they're so paranoid that they can't let anybody gain a foot ground, but it's amazing to me that it continues, 3,000 to 5,000 years down the road. We're still in the same boat here with, kings and royal people running countries when it should obviously be the people running the country and not them.
Okay, Eddie, I think Eddie is trying to say that in spite of differences in language and culture and religion and geographic space, it seems it's a global problem. Do you agree?
It is a global problem, of course. As I was criticizing the American media and how it is keeping the American people in the dark when it comes to the world outside. This is because of something. Something is causing this. Somebody is behind this. Somebody is trying to control the media in the United States, and it's the government and it's the business people who have all the money, and those forces are driving the world into war, into more poverty, into more wealth for the already wealthy. That it's making the gap between the poor and the rich huge, and it's becoming even bigger by the hour. So yes, I agree with him. But in the United States, at least you can express yourself. Maybe you will not have somebody to hear you. Maybe you will be just yelling in the desert and nobody's listening to you. But at least you can express yourself without any harm or damage happening to you. When the police is brutal, you are able to criticize the police, and people are talking about it frankly. They are talking about it in the media. They are protesting in the streets. But in most of our countries, we were able to do that in Egypt, for example, before the military junta led by Sisi came to power. After the January 25th, till the military junta came. But afterwards, no. They imposed a new protest law that doesn't allow us to protest and voice our opinion. They are even arresting people for posting stuff on the internet. The Americans have these privileges that can make changes in their country. But most of them are taking it for granted. they are just leaving it to a few fellows from the Occupy movement and some of the leftists and they call them hippies and they call them so and so, and they don't really question what those people are doing and why are they doing it, and is it just, is their cause a good cause or a bad cause? They just apathetic. They're just apathetic, and this is what is not making things change here in the States or in the UK or in Germany or in France and these also regimes in these free countries, they are annoyed by the freedoms the people have in their country. So from time to time, they will try to scare people. They are trying to take away these freedoms by convincing the people that they are in danger, and you have to give up some of your freedoms in order for you to be protected. So we can spy on you, we can listen to your calls, we can open your email for you and see what you're receiving and what you're sending and stuff like that. And some people here, they don't mind as long as I'm not doing anything bad. So why the hell wouldn't the American authorities, the NSA, the FBI, or whatever, listen or tab or wire or do anything to me? While this is violating the rights, violating the Constitution, and endangering the future of this country. This country has managed to succeed until now and prosper because it allowed freedom. But if the future is a totalitarian future where everybody is being watched, where there is a big brother who's doing everything and controlling everything, the privileges that the Americans or the Europeans have will vanish without them even noticing.
Yeah, we have experience in our countries. We went through all what the U.S. is going through now, and look what happened to us. And I always tell our listeners, can you and I have this conversation on any radio station in the Arab world?
No, you can't, of course.
And what happens if we did?
To begin with, you will not have an independent, free, privately owned radio station. You're not allowed to do that in my country, for example. In Egypt, all radio stations and TV stations, terrestrial, are owned by the government. You're not allowed to start your FM radio, your local village FM radio station. You're not allowed to do that. And those satellite ones are owned by businessmen or big corporations that can be easily controlled and manipulated by the government. They can force them to do stuff and air stuff and publish stuff. So, to begin with, in our countries, we don't have this outlet. We don't have this radio or TV station where we can express ourselves. If we manage to somehow break through and appear on television and say something that they didn't like, you can directly go to jail for saying something out loud, for criticizing something. So these are privileges that people are taking for granted in the free world. We don't have these in our country.
Let me go to Pete in Plant City. Good morning, Pete. You are on True Talk.
Hey, good morning. I'm glad you have your guest on. I want to cover a few things real quick. Is it ever possible in Egypt they could put something in their constitution similar to what the U.S. has? Separation of church and state, separation of mosque and state. So you have individual rights and, one religion or the majority religion doesn't overwhelm everything. Now, there's a lot of similarities between Egypt and the United States. Egypt's currently run by the military. And the United States, we're currently run by oligarchs. They control both parties. And you're seeing it in 2016 where the oligarchs in the United States want Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush. It's a win-win no matter what happens, the end result in the election. But in getting back to what's going on with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is dumping the oil on the market at below cost. They're doing what Walmart does to all the competitors in the United States. My big question is, did the Saudi royal family also play the stock market and bet against the derivatives and the hedge funds that the bankers in the United States have been betting for with the price of oil continuing to rise? If so, they can't lose.
Okay, thank you so much, Pete. Wael, do you have any comment? I think he raises a very important question that I get to be asked all the time. Can the Arab world, or let's say Egypt in particular, can Egypt have a constitution where there is a separation between state and mosque?
Unfortunately, this is very hard, because even the most liberal, the most secular political parties or organizations in Egypt, they don't want to recognize that there is a problem with involving religion in politics. They even if they do, even if they believe this, they will submit to the will of the people and the fanatics in the country to include this in the constitution. We secular people like me, we are not a lot. There's not a lot of us in Egypt. We want this separation, but the religious institutions in Egypt are benefiting from this, whether it's Al-Azhar or the Orthodox Church in Egypt. The Orthodox Church is a state inside the state. It's controlling the people as if they own them, and the Constitution is giving them this benefit. The government and the Ministry of Interior and everybody is watching this and being silent. It's the same with Al-Azhar to Muslims. Al-Azhar can confiscate any book, confiscate any movie, or attack any article if published in a newspaper, or even separate a man who is married from his wife if they believe that this man said something against religion. They have these powers, and it is supported by the law, and it's supported by the Constitution. But even if we had something in the Constitution, there is no guarantee that it will be fulfilled in Egypt.
But is it a good thing, Wael, for a society like Egypt, that the lay people?
It is really good.
In what way?
Or else, I'm asking them, why would you leave your country and go to a secular country like the U.S. or the U.K. and seek asylum there? Why would you seek asylum in these countries that you believe are embracing secularism and atheism and sexual freedom and all the things that you criticize in your own country? Because they value freedom over anything, but they still want religious oppression in their own country. Even those Muslims who are living here inside the United States, they want a religious regime in Egypt, and they believe it's better, although they might not come back to Egypt when this happens. They prefer this atmosphere of freedom in the United States. They just don't know it. They love freedom, but the religion is deeply manipulating them into believing that it is better than freedom, which is not true.
I received... go ahead.
Coming back to the Constitution.
Yeah.
We have a Constitution now in Egypt that says that it is allowed for you to protest and to organize a sit-in and to organize a strike for workers and stuff like that. But yet, if you do that, you get arrested. You get prosecuted. You go to court. You're in jail. Despite that, the Constitution is protecting you.
So what you're trying...
The Constitution did not stop the government from imposing the protest law by which Ahmed Maher and Muhammad Adel from the Youth 6th of April movement are in jail now.
So you're trying to say, well, even if we put in the constitution, the Egyptians put in the Egyptian constitution a separation of state and church, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be applicable.
We need to have a government, a revolutionary government, a revolutionary police force, a revolutionary executive powers, a revolutionary legislative, in order for these things to take place. I'm telling you, all the revolutionaries are in jail now, most of them for protesting. It's not only the Muslim Brotherhood, not only the Islamists, but people like Ala Abdel Fattah and his sister, Sana Abdel Fattah, and Ahmed Maher and Muhammad Adil. They are all belonging to secular movements that want freedom for the country, but they are now in jail, accused of protesting and accused of terrorism and accused of many things.
Well, I have a couple of questions that came on Twitter, and actually they were in Arabic, and I have to ask them. Two or three different people said, why do you swear a lot on your Twitter account? You make so much sense talking about politics. They absolutely trust your judgment when it comes to talking about political events in the Arab world, but why do you swear a lot?
Because I embrace freedom. I want to express myself freely in my own context. I'm talking on my own profile or my own Twitter account, and I'm allowed to express myself freely. And you are free to follow me or follow me not. I'm not swearing now on radio, am I?
No, you are not. You and I will be in big trouble.
This is your context, and I respect your context. But people who come to follow me, they have to respect what I'm doing on my profile too, because it's mine and I'm free to do whatever I feel like doing. And no law, no country should control this. That's it, basically.
Okay.
I swearing is a freedom of expression. If you're angry at somebody, you're not killing him. You're not pointing a gun. You're not exploding yourself or killing anybody. You're just swearing.
And finally, I have one more question. What is your job? How do you make a living in Egypt? It's not easy to be a journalist in the Arab world these days, especially if you are critical of the status quo. So what is your job and how do you make a living?
Well, I used to be a journalist in Egypt, but now I'm making a living through writing to websites, foreign newspapers, of course. None of the Egyptians would allow me to write for them. I give lectures in foreign universities here in the United States. Also, I give lectures. I do training. I train people on how to use social media. Lawyers, doctors, human rights activists. I teach them how to utilize social media in their jobs. Stuff like that. Nothing stable, nothing full-time, but I can manage.
But you don't show up on any of the Arab media. I have seen you, I think, on BBC. I have seen you on Al Hurra, which is a US-sponsored Arabic station. But do you ever appear on any Arab, even like Lebanese? Because, for instance, the Lebanese are way more open in their media and open to criticism than the other Arab countries.
It depends on the time and the context surrounding the appearance. I appeared on some Lebanese TV stations. I appeared on LBC. I appeared even on Al Manar, which is owned by Hezbollah. It depends on what they want you to talk about and the situations around you. Sometimes the atmosphere is relaxed, so they allow you to talk. Sometimes it is not. They don't allow you. I appeared on Al Jazeera. I appeared on Abu Dhabi television, maybe only once. I appeared even on Egyptian television, but for example, if they want to impeach Morsi, and I am criticizing Morsi, they will let me on TV, for example. They might let me also on the official television, the Egyptian official television. But once things have turned and they have a new regime now, and you are critical of this regime, nobody wants you anymore. Even some foreign media outlets that are working inside Egypt who don't want to get into trouble with the regime, who don't want their offices to be closed, like Al Jazeera, for example, that was closed in Egypt. Others, they don't want to have the same fate. So they won't host people from the opposition like me.
Okay, Wael, I want to thank you for being on True Talk. We have been talking to Wael Abbas, who is an Egyptian journalist, blogger, and human rights activist. You can follow him on Twitter under his name, Wael Abbas, Wael Abbas, and I will post that on our Facebook page. Happy travels in the U.S., and if you ever come to Tampa, we'll be happy to host you here, Wael.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being on True Talk. That was Wael. And again, I have to remind our listeners for maybe the 1 millionth time how lucky we are to have freedom of speech, how lucky we are to have WMNF, because as Wael said, it is almost impossible to have this conversation on any radio in the Arab world and feel safe afterwards. I mean, we might be able to be interviewed and say something, but your safety is not guaranteed. And the people he mentioned, like Ala Abdel Fattah and his sister, they are very secular Egyptians. Sana is like 18 years old, and she was simply standing with a sign saying that she wants her brother to be freed, and she was given a sentence of 3 years in prison. Prisons in Egypt are not a place where you want to be, and there are 3 Al Jazeera English reporters that have been in prison for 1 year. So we are so lucky to have True Talk. We are so lucky to have WMNF. So keep supporting freedom of speech. And we have been through all this that we are going under here now, spying on our emails or phone calls or attempting to silence some of us here on WMNF. So don't let this happen. Thank you for supporting WMNF. I think NPR News is next, and this is Tampa 88.5 FM, and this is Summer signing off. From NPR News.